President Trump saying he has no plans to fire Fed Chair Jay Powell, though he has been toying quite publicly with that idea. Senator Elizabeth Warren has been defending the chairman's role at the FOMC, and Senator Warren joins us this morning. She is the lead Democrat on the Banking Committee. Good morning to you. We just had a guest on in Kevin Warsh, someone who folks have speculated about potentially taking that job. He openly talked about the idea of regime change. And so I just start with this very question. In a very practical way, if in fact Jay Powell were to be fired, pushed out, or otherwise dismissed, what you think would genuinely happen to the bond market, the dollar, the equity markets?
I think they crash. Remember, the way the independence of the Fed works, it provides a signal both to our country and to financial markets around the world that on a couple of key points, particularly monetary policy, what we've done in the United States is we put someone in charge who's supposed to filter through all of the economic data and then make a decision independent of politics. Our Fed chair's term does not run coextensive with the term of the president. The president does not have the authority to fire the Fed chair. The Fed chair is different from all of the cabinet officials. All the cabinet officials can say, as they have, I will do whatever the president of the United States wants me to do. I will do what is in the political interests of the president of the United States. The Fed chair sits in a different box. He has different tools, and he is supposed to be independent and make those decisions. I disagree with him often, in this case, about how he's made those decisions, but the independence itself is a value. It's a value to the United States. It's a value to our markets. If Donald Trump destroys that, then he brings down those markets. He burns something of value to the United States.
So, Senator, we were talking to somebody else, actually, from Goldman Sachs this morning about the practical implications and whether there would be an immediate crash, whether it's just a slow sort of a slow credibility issue that somehow impacts things over time. And the question, the reason I'm even mentioning that is the idea that, you know, no matter what, come next May, there will be somebody else in this seat that is not Jay Powell. And whether the markets have already even started to look through where we are today to then. And by default, whoever's put into that role is likely, as I keep mentioning on this broadcast, is probably going to have made some kind of blood oath to the president to say they're lowering interest rates. And so, you know, you talk about the independence of the Fed. I wonder whether the quote-unquote independence of the Fed is already in question.
Actually, I agree with you entirely on this point. I think there's a real cost to what Donald Trump has been doing by threatening to fire Powell. Disagree with Powell, that's fine. But threatening to fire him over and over, waving around a letter that purportedly would fire Jay Powell, talking with other senators about firing. The next time around, when we get ready to have a new Fed chair next spring, who's going to believe that Donald Trump picks someone who's going to be independent? So I think you're right. I think that Donald Trump is burning the credibility of the independence of the Fed's decision-making. And look, you can't cheat the markets over time. People get that, and that just means that the system as it works in the United States is not as strong and independent as the rest of the world thought.
But, Senator, here's the complicated part. If that's true, if the independence is already in question, the market is not crashing. It has not reacted that way. And so that's what I'm grappling with, because we have a lot of people who come on our air, you included, but we've had CEOs, the head of Goldman Sachs, the head of Bank of America, say the independence of the Fed is sacrosanct. And yet, if the independence of the Fed is already up for grabs, you would think the market would have reacted already.
Well, the question is how immediately. You know, people can decide, I'll stay in this bond market, for another 6 months. I'll stay in this bond market for another 9 months. But how much erosion is starting to take place? Look, it's the same thing that's happening around tariffs right now. Donald Trump says he's in with tariffs, he's out with tariffs, he's in with tariffs, he's out with tariffs. And you have to measure two different things. One is, how much are the tariffs actually directly increasing prices? But the second is, what is the cost of creating this kind of uncertainty and chaos? And the answer, we know for certain, is that there are a lot of businesses that are not investing. Who's going to build a factory? Who's going to buy expensive equipment? Who's going to train up a workforce when you don't know what your inputs are going to cost because you don't even have a sense of what the tariffs are going to look like or whether you're going to get dinged when you try to ship this stuff overseas? Plus, Powell himself said he would have lowered interest rates last February, but for the fact of Donald Trump's tariff chaos. So that means here in America that people who have credit cards and who have car loans and any other kind of consumer credit have been paying more for 6 months now because of one human being, Donald Trump, and the chaos he causes. Markets force an adjustment for chaos.